6 was a dandy, as Franklin, of course, tried to get as much in as he could, but the champion Johnson countered well. And this is round number 7. Scheduled for 15 tonight, but the way these light heavies are hitting each other, it may not go the distance.
And Johnson, again, has Franklin backing up. That's what he wants. Franklin is a pretty good counterpuncher, but he may need to set himself to punch strong enough to hurt Marvin Johnson.
Al, you were right on. There was a cut over the right eye of Marvin Johnson, and just a slight cut possibly over the right eye as well of Matthew Franklin. So we'll be watching that as the fight continues now.
Franklin, a cautious, careful fighter, and always takes his time, but in the process often gets himself behind in fights and takes a lot of punishment.
Good left-right combination that time by Matthew, slipping in on Johnson.
One of the most underused weapons for Franklin is his jab, and he isn't using it as much in this fight as he'd like there. He tries it, but it doesn't get there.
Al, we talked about it at the top of the show, and the fact that Johnson is making his first title defense, and he does it against a guy who had beaten him in 12 rounds earlier. Rather surprised.
Well, indeed. I guess it was a calculated risk. Opened up the floodgates, and he really went to work on Marvin Johnson. Johnson amazingly stays on his feet. Another angle will show you how he set it up with the jab there and lands a straight right hand.
One thing also with Johnson's style, you'll see in a moment after he comes over the rope, now he's in trouble doubling up, and it really opened it for the uppercut, and Franklin knew it and loaded up with a couple of them. Johnson again, visibly shaking. You can see him still shaking his head as Matthew Franklin sets on his stool for a little extra rest as we get ready for round number 8.
And Franklin still comes forward, and he's still landing punches. So Franklin knows he's got a game competitor in front of him. And Johnson shake the cobwebs here.
Marvin Johnson, the champion. First defense. What a tough one by Matthew Franklin here in Indianapolis. There's that uppercut again.
Johnson coming back. Good shots on the inside by Marvin Johnson. What a gutty performance. And he has got Matthew Saad Muhammad shook momentarily.
He's forcing him back towards the ropes. Neither of the fighters have really been on the ropes other than at the end of round 7. By Johnson now. Franklin again slipped another right hand in. He's left-right combination, and Johnson trying to counter with just one left. It's almost a 7-1, maybe 10-1 combination here with Franklin scoring the 10.
Matthew Franklin just going wild here in this round.
Johnson almost defenseless as he has yet to throw a punch here in the last few seconds, and Franklin is starting to measure him now here in the 8th. Johnson comes back with a wild left. Another left steps in.
And there is blood from both of the eyes of Matthew Franklin at this point, from the right eye and the left, and I think he is going to work on Johnson because those cuts, look at the blood masking the left eye of Matthew Franklin. So he's got a terrible cut, and he knows he better go to work.
Johnson is almost helpless on the ropes. He goes down to the ropes. George Favis sending Matthew Franklin to a neutral corner halfway through this, the 8th round. You can see the blood all over the face of Matthew Franklin. And the referee says that's it. So Marvin Johnson has been stopped by Matthew Franklin as George DeFavis says no, he cannot go any further. And the new WBC light heavyweight champion now is Matthew Franklin. Matthew Saad Muhammad, if you will.
Well, and for Marvin Johnson, he beat the count of 10, but the referee, George DeFavis, said, no, you can't go on. And as you look at Matt Franklin, they are attempting to deal with the bad cuts over both his right and left eye. They opened up here in the 8th round, and you could see them dabbing at it. He was like a wild man going after Marvin Johnson after those cuts developed.
You know, it's almost as if somebody had said, hey, you're going to have more trouble with those things if we don't get this thing over in a hurry. He comes out of the 8th, pounds Johnson into the canvas. He answers the 10 count, but the referee, George DeFavis, says, nope, that's it, and the fight is over.
Shaking Marvin Johnson and just ecstatic is Matt Franklin as he is lifted to the head of his handlers. And for Matt Franklin, quite a struggle culminated here. You mentioned the personal struggles he had as a child, and this is the culmination of it. And he was coming on against Johnson. You can see the blood masking his face. He had hit Marvin Johnson with some tremendous shots. That right hand, I think, was the one that did the real damage. And just from an accumulation of blows, Marvin Johnson goes down.
Al, it was almost a 7, 8, 9 punches to 1. in favor of Franklin at this stage of the fight here in the 8th. And it all started with a flurry at the end of round 7 that really visibly shook Marvin Johnson, the champion. And you see the end here.
And that little left uppercut did a lot of damage for Franklin.
You can see him still looking at those cuts and trying to stop the blood.